28th. I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a public hearing regarding a liquor license renewal for All Play, and we'll open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? We have a report from the chief regarding this application, and he confirms that there is no incident of the business and there's no record of any kind. I've noticed a couple of things that aren't major, that just have made me ask a question. On the page 2 of the application, they're suggesting they want malt and spiritus. Those are the two boxes that are checked. But if you go back over to page 4 of 9, they're requesting, it looks like they've circled a Class 2 and a Class 4.
Class 3 and
Class
4.
3.
Is it Class 3? Sorry,
Yeah.
Class 3 and Class 4,
But no class one.
but no Class 1. So I'm not sure what it is they're looking for here. I'm guessing they're looking for 3 and 4.
Well, again, what we can do is go back to them and have them correct it
With a condition?
with a condition, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would approve it on the basis of malt and Venus.
Right,
Yeah, beer and wine.
correct.
And if that's the motion, I would entertain that now.
So moved.
Just a second, sorry. They closed the public hearing.
Right. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
Never mind.
Is there any comment from the public about this application? Okay, there is none. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, is there a motion on the application?
Motion to approve the liquor license for All Play
With a condition.
with the condition of checking into them wanting a Class 1 license as well.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. That's done. Adjustments to the agenda.
We have a request for extension of license on premises, and this is for Odd Alewives Farm Brewery.
And that will be under new business,
Correct,
so that would be 10.9,
correct.
and that'll be Odd Alewives.
And we also have a meeting with the assessors that is not on the,
That's correct.
Correct. That's,
And that would be
The levy.
12, I believe. And then 12 would become 13. So 12 will be Board of Assessors to set the tax rate. And there's actually another couple of them. They relate to 10.2. 10.2 refers only to Article 7. We're actually discussing 7, 10, and 16 tonight. Okay. We have a motion to make those changes.
So moved.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Citizens' comments. Earl.
I'm here tonight to speak and address the item of new business as far as the ladder truck purchase is concerned, a potential.
Okay, but we will be.
Will you allow public comment? That was my question. That would be a
Well, we
question.
will be discussing that later on in the agenda, and we will welcome your comments at that time.
Okay, because that is what I would address.
Okay, yes, we will welcome. Guaranteed.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Okay, we'll move on. Select Board comments. Katie?
I've gotten a couple calls from the public about medical marijuana caregivers shops going into town. And they're very dissatisfied with the way things are going. And it's causing citizens concern. And we need to do something about this. to bring it about so that maybe through an ordinance or maybe an emergency meeting call to put an ordinance together to limit the amount of caregiver shops coming into the town. I don't know how else to put it. We need to do something, act quickly on this. I don't know what the state law has been. Has anything come down the
No,
pike?
for medical, no.
Not for medical?
Bless you.
There was a change? Yeah.
That's all I have for comment.
Bill, can you speak more towards that?
Yeah, Max, I need you to jump in on this too. The
just
change in the
reading that, too.
law, it's effective October 9th? Max?
October 9th. It was in the main town.
Yeah.
The medical marijuana revision addresses a lot of things, but germane to your comments right now is that the caregiver retail sales are going to be treated just like we do recreational marijuana. The town doesn't have to do anything to allow that to happen. You have to have an ordinance allowing it. So effective October 9th, if the town doesn't do anything, we'll prohibit them.
Doesn't do what?
We don't have to do anything at all.
Okay.
To allow them after October 9th, we would have to have an ordinance that specifically says we allow them. And that would be the same as the recreational marijuana for stores and
It's an
things like that.
opt-in.
Right.
It's an opt-in.
But you
That's one thing, I
can't-
didn't realize
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
recreational was part of that as
Yeah,
well.
well,
I knew-
it's the same as
Okay.
the
But,
recreational.
Okay.
but what about existing, pre-existing?
Pre-existing are allowed to.
If they,
grandfather.
if they
Right.
are open before October 9th,
Their grandfather.
they're grandfathered.
Do you want to talk about the deadlines?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So in terms of new shops, there aren't any, at least coming from the planning board this month.
What if there is?
They missed the deadline.
Okay,
I would have to,
okay. This is for the audience,
Yeah.
not just for me, okay?
to the audience, oh, then in this case, I'll look this way, to the audience for new caregiver stores, whether it's the Hot Next Highbrow or Herbal Solutions or whatever else has been approved recently. I have a cutoff date that's 3 weeks before the planning board meeting, which was last Wednesday. So because the only item that will go to the planning board that was submitted to me last Wednesday was in regards to the telecommunication tower that's along Route 1, there's no new caregiver shops that are coming into town, at least for the planning board in September. And if someone was to come into my office and say, we want to open up another caregiver store, I would tell them that the next time the planning board would meet is in October, after this state law takes effect, in which case it's pretty much a waste of time for them at that point, because they wouldn't be allowed.
So what's here is here.
Yeah.
Yep,
Pardon me?
So what's here is here now. That's
Okay.
it.
no new caregiver
But I
shops.
would like to clarify the store up on top of the hill, because I was confused with this.
Yes,
First of all, it was supposed to be an auto sales shop.
originally,
And then-
yes.
And then they will, and then part of that was going to be a vape shop, okay? Okay.
Yep.
Now I'm hearing that there's a caregiver going in there. So what has happened is the auto end of the agreement had to step out, and they had to come back to the planning board and reuse that building. They had to type it up different so that the auto part of it is out of it, so that a caregiver shop can step in, okay? One person owns the building and the vape shop. He is also leasing the other part of the building for the caregiver, okay? What's the guy's name that owns it?
It's an Emery, isn't it?
Emery. Mr. Emery from Warren owns the building, and he has the vape shop, and he's leasing the caregiver part of it. I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify that, because it was very confusing to me. I thought.
Now, the one correction I'll have on that is that it was a change of use, so it's no longer auto, it's just the whole building is now retail.
Right,
That's the one clarification I have.
yes, okay. Any questions on that?
All set? Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Any other citizen comments?
Is there still,
Okay, we'll move on.
well,
Select board comments.
Sorry,
select board?
town manager's report.
No,
No,
she
we
has
have-
Select board
select board.
comments, good lord. Shoot me. Anybody have any more comments to make? In fact, I
Do you
do
have any?
have a comment to
I
make.
have
'cause
something.
Well, you go ahead, Jan.
Do you guys have anything? I'm just
good.
being right in order.
I'm good. Thank you.
Well, two things. One, just to announce, Kathy Osborne was here last month, or whenever the last meeting was, to talk about the Broad Bay Gala Community Celebration. And so the posters, I just came out, and that's September 1st. It's going to be like a street party. And that's where Pleasant meets Maine in town. And they're doing a capital campaign at the Broad Bay Congregational Church, and to make that historical building safer, and to open it up to more community, a lot of community events, concerts, a lot of things that go on there for the community, and they are trying to get the building in order for that. And so it sounds like it's going to be fun. There's going to be music and one of those bounce things for kids, and ice cream, and tours and that sort of thing. So, see this, can we put this up somewhere? Out in the hallway? Poster. Anyway, and the other thing is, we have a couple, I don't know when you want to do that, but we have some correspondence that should be read into the record.
Yes, please
You want
go
to do that
ahead.
now?
Yep,
It was under 8.3.
Oh, okay, that's already down there. Okay, then we'll wait.
all righty. Any other comments from the select board? I just want to point out that we did go to the event at the Historical Society
Oh,
on Sunday, and it was amazing. Glenn Melvin gave a great talk. Abden spoke about the clam harvesting in Waldoboro, a little bit about how they do it, the history of it, where we are now in terms of progress within the state, progress we're making, things we still have to do to clean the river up. And it was just really interesting, and I hope when I do it again next year, we'll get even more people there. It was well attended. There was a fair number of people there.
The
And we all
clams
got
were
to eat
wonderful.
clams, and they were amazing.
all you wanted.
Yeah, they were good.
Scary, yeah.
They were really good.
It was a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Warm.
Well, I thought it was really
I had
nice.
four.
It was good.
Julie?
So, how many of you been down to Pine Street Landing? I know, it's wonderful. I just wanted to give everybody an update. We are almost completed. I believe the concrete was going in for the actual gangway. There has been some questions about the height. We had some high tides. The resident tide expert, Clint, there at the end of the table has told me it was a 12-foot tide.
It was.
And we were about 1.5 feet from topping, which led to some concern. And we chatted with the engineer and John Daigle. It was engineered to top. The method of construction and the rock that's compacted on the top, which it's not quite compacted yet because they're still in the process, it is meant to overtop. So we did get the grant. It was reduced in height, and that was part of the grant funding for recreational boating and access. We are also getting a new used float, which is exciting for everybody. So we're going out to an island soon to see that. So hopefully that will go well, and we'll bring it back.
There's gonna be a gang thing going down.
Well, we already got
Correct.
the ramp.
Yeah, I know, I
Right.
was just
Right.
letting the public.
So if you have any questions about that, just come see me. But I just want to say Farley and Sons has been absolutely wonderful. I am down there at least during the entire project 2 to 3 times a day. It was, I've taken a lot of pictures. You've probably seen them on Facebook. Absolutely, in my 30 years of doing this, probably the best contractor I've ever worked with. And I don't say that lightly as the former owner of a landscape company for 28 years. I don't give out compliments like that easily to landscape firms. Absolutely the best firm I've ever worked with, besides Blade Runners, because we were awesome. But great people to work with, very accommodating to all the questions. And the only other question I had is, why didn't you make the ramp wider? We did. So the ramp is wider. We did extend it a little bit to our limit that we could. So it's a good thing.
When's
Very
the
good thing.
float going in?
Probably not till next year by the time we go
Oh, I see.
view the new used float and bring it back and everything. So probably not till next year.
When are they going to inspect it? The final inspection for the state, the people who gave us the grant, doesn't that have to occur? Or has that already occurred?
Well, not until it's done. And then we have to, we're at the mercy of the state.
Okay, so does the ramp and gangway have to be in before they inspect it?
Yes.
So it's not gonna be inspected until next spring presumably?
Well, not the float. The float wasn't part of the grant,
Oh, okay.
so.
Is there, I just have a question people have asked, and I'm curious what we will be doing, what our role will be once that part of the landing is done. What will the town be doing to that area?
It's gonna have picnic tables.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna have an enhanced area for information, and we talked about that with our shellfish warden, Justin Hills has some
Yep.
interesting ideas
Yep.
about creating more of a public information center.
Great.
Unfortunately, the vision that we had, which was going to really deal with the clamming industry and the river and all the other amazing things that happen on the river, because we didn't get that property next door, kind of went to the wayside. So it will probably get a little bit more thought to that.
And will that be repaved? Will the other
That
part of
all
that
will be repaved.
so
Everything's going to be
repaving.
repaved when we repave Dutch Neck and Gross
The
Neck.
others, and that will be like next year, maybe?
I think it'll be this fall.
Fall. Oh,
It's
wow.
scheduled for this
Okay,
fall.
great.
Our issue is, though, we don't want to pave it now because then there'll be 2 setup fees. So once the pavers are here, we'd rather have them do
Yep.
everything at once.
Yep.
It saves us money.
Makes
We're gonna
sense.
have a flagpole too?
We're going to have a flagpole,
Yep.
A lighted flagpole.
a lighted flagpole,
And
yes.
there'll be something nice for notifications to be put on, there's that old,
Right, that's what
Telephone
Justin was
Yeah,
talking
that's
about,
right,
is
yes.
our public
That's-
information.
yes.
It'll tell you when the river's open, when it's closed for clamming,
Uh-huh.
it
Any
will be.
notices that go up, that come out from the state, a place for them to be posted
Correct.
that look nice.
Correct.
And then-
I mean, it would be great to have more of a educational center,
Yeah.
but, that's, we'll have to work
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And a
then-
river walk, we were
Yeah.
gonna, but it's all good.
And then the garden.
And the gardens will be put
club
in.
will go in there and do
The
their
garden
final-
club has salvaged many plants, and the plantings will be back. Probably not in the landing area where there's stone, but in other areas. Because it is also a commercial area. It's not just for recreation. We do have people who have to offload. We have tuna fishermen. We have, some of our best people who Elver are there. So that should all be,
They're gonna beautificate.
You're gonna make it nice, yeah.
Beautification is gonna be done by the garden.
by the garden club with Public Works.
Yes.
Thank you.
Our RFP for the LED streetlights is out. Cross Street is still closed, and their date is to October 17th. Route 1, as you can tell, is being worked on, and that's an ongoing process. So just be patient as you can. Luckily, though, up at the 220 corner and Route 1, they have put the arrows down on the pavement, so that's made life a little bit easier. Main Water is coming next month, just because we have a house full to discuss a possible rate increase. It's not possible, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that we need one. The solar array is producing energy and life is grand there. We at some point will be relocating the screen that shows how much energy we're generating to a different location. Chief of Police, as you all know, our chief is going up to the school to be our youth information officer, which is great. We do have an opening for a chief of police, and that candidate profile and job announcement will go out tomorrow. So that's kind of an exciting time. And we would also like to congratulate Larry Hazeltine for becoming one of our patrolmen, for becoming the police chief in Wiscasset. And we wish him well in his new endeavor, and we are very proud of him. We found a beaver dam. As everybody knows, I repeated at the last meeting. Actually, there are 3 beaver dams. on the Madomic, and that could be one of the sources of, Beth, our famous E. coli testing. So the Shellfish Committee is working very hard to address that, and hopefully those dams will be removed, and we'll see a decrease in our numbers. And that is all I have.
Thank you very much. Consent calendar, a motion to approve, please.
We just wanted to read the.
We have some
Oh, now
correspondence.
that's after the consent calendar.
No, that's part of it.
It's part of it.
It's part of it.
Correspondence.
Yeah.
It's 8.3. Yeah, you're right. I apologize.
So we received two pieces of correspondence. One was for the Gethner Scholarship, and this is from Sophie Cohen. Thank you very much for awarding me the George Gethner Scholarship. This goes very far in my education and quest to become an attorney. Your contribution is very generous, and I can't express my appreciation enough. Thank you, Sophie Cohen. And we also got it was a very nice thank you for Public Works and John Daigle. And it's, trees and the cutting of trees is a very personal thing in the right-of-way. And the town does have the right to cut trees in the right-of-way. And sometimes people are very attached to their trees and they can't see the forest for the trees. Never mind. Bad pun. Dear Julie, last Saturday we came home from camp to find our 40-year-old lilac hedge severely pruned and into pruning, and prunings were left by the side of the road. We were not happy. On Monday morning, I went into the town office to see if it had been the town or the state that was responsible. Everyone was very understanding and took my number and said they would pass it on. I thought, well, that's that. In about an hour, I received a call from the John Daigle, who listened to me and assured me that although it was routine, he would look into it. I went home and cleaned it up, 3 large wheelbarrow loads full, feeling a little foolish for being upset. Today I spoke to John again, and he said he had found out that it was Waldeboro's mowing, and we talked about how this hasn't been a problem until recently. He was patient and understanding and polite. I appreciate him. He will work with us so that it doesn't continue to happen. People said not to bother to report it. No one will care, but they were wrong. John did care, and this was handled very nicely. Julie, I just wanted you to know, I really appreciated it. Laura McNelly. So I just want to point out that sometimes we might, on occasion, do things you're not real happy about. But we do hear you, it is addressed, and I just want you to understand that we'd rather hear from you when you're unhappy. So please call me if you're unhappy. Call me if you're happy too, because I like really happy people. But it's not a problem. If you have a complaint, a lot of times you might not like our answer, but you always do get an answer. And I just want to say a big shout out to John Daigle and the Public Works Department. I have absolutely one of the best Public Works departments in the state of Maine, probably the best. And they're just really great people.
We did have one other piece of correspondence that came from Josie Jameson, a thank you. It was for a scholarship, and it may not have been the one from the town. And we'll check on that. School started now. However, she was thankful and did the right thing and wrote a thank you note to thank whoever gave her the scholarship for that. So she should be commended for
Thank you. So let's go back to a motion for the consent calendar. Is there a
Move to
motion?
accept.
Is there
Second.
a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the retire and place policy.
This is before you again because the policy that was posted on the website was different than the policy that you adopted. So just in case there was any question of which one it should be, this is the correct one. So you've already approved it once. We just want to make sure, so I just need a motion to approve again.
We have a sentence needs, maybe Bob
Yeah,
can
there
fix
are
that
two
sentence.
nits.
Yeah.
There were
nits.
two nits on
Yeah,
paragraph E that would like to
E,
correct at
yes,
the
I was
meeting
gonna
here.
say.
Yeah.
There is one on C also.
We need a comma after the word accrued, and a
Okay.
small a on the word and. It's a compound sentence.
Yeah, it's.
And it would be
Right.
helpful
I was
to
gonna
put
say
the
it's an
word
incomplete.
same in the second line between the and current. So you're saying the same current policies of the town as all new hires.
Yeah, okay. That was my
Everybody on
comment to
board?
rework
Excellent.
that sentence and
Did you
Just
have anything
this-
else, Jan?
Yeah, well, just on C. It's just a minor thing, but you have, it's just a minor thing. Should be his, her. not
Sorry?
him.
His, her.
C, his, her.
It doesn't change any of the
It doesn't
content
change
of the
any
policy.
content at all.
It's just
Just a
grammar.
little cleanup
Okay.
thing.
I'll accept a motion if there is one.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, that's official.
Okay, and this will go on the website.
And then
This
the
is-
order for removal of dangerous building.
Whereas the Waldeboro Board of Selectmen held a public hearing on July 11th, 2017 to determine whether the buildings owned by the heirs of Charles Call at 994, 992 Winslow Mills Road are dangerous buildings, and whereas by order dated July 25th, 2017, the municipal officers found that the buildings are dangerous buildings and a nuisance and ordered removal of the white building and sheds and remediation or removal of the red building by the property owner. And whereas the property owner, the heirs of Charles Call, did not appeal the decision of the Board of Selectmen, and whereas the heirs of Charles Call have not removed the dangerous buildings from the property or remediated the red building, and whereas the Waldeboro Board of Selectmen adjudges such conditions to be a nuisance and a hazard within the meaning of 17 MRSA 2851. Now therefore be it ordered, pursuant to 17 MRS 2853, the town manager is hereby authorized and directed to complete the demolition and removal of said buildings and the cleanup of the site. 2, the town manager, the assessor, and the town attorney are authorized to take all actions necessary to recover the town's cost as authorized by 17 MRS 2853. And the reason we're doing this, they've been served again, is because last year we went through this process. We needed to wait for the new budget. We did the first one that was on Back Cove Road.
Right.
This is the second one in the process. So the new budget year has started and we are able to do that. But you just have to just vote on this and then we can proceed.
And we've heard absolutely nothing from,
We have heard nothing
Yeah,
from the
from his
heirs of the
last
falls.
comment.
From
Yep.
The
Could I
last
have a
comment.
motion, please?
so
Make a
moved.
motion to accept this order for the town removal of dangerous building.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion?
Does anyone live in there?
Yes, but our code enforcement officer will take care of that.
And when do we think it'll be taken down?
I'm anticipating October, November-ish,
Cool.
before the winter.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Smeltzer, Fire Chief, I think you're up. And I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about this tonight.
Good evening. I'd like to begin this evening by thanking Dale Smith, Bill Maxwell, Andrew Santherson, Mark Gifford, and Bill Bragg. They've been very involved with the planning and research portion of this project. Over the last 3 years, they have traveled all over the Northeast, as far away as Pennsylvania, at their own expense and using their own vacation time and their own time off as we work towards making the right recommendation to the town. And I'd like to thank Johnny Daigle for taking the time to review the spec. I appreciate his expertise, his suggestions, and his recommendations. We've known for a very long time. Just for the last 3 years, we've been budgeting and putting money aside because we've known that we need to replace the ladder truck. Unfortunately, we've also needed to replace many other trucks first. Since becoming chief, this is the 4th piece of apparatus that I've had to replace because it wouldn't pass inspection or its certification. So I've had to prioritize the replacement schedule by first replacing the trucks in the worst condition. Unfortunately, again, our current ladder truck did not cooperate and wouldn't pass certification 2 years ago. And I had to make a decision. Not wanting to incur more than one debt service for the town during the same time period, I made a conscious decision to rely on mutual aid for aerial operations for the short-term foreseeable future until Engine 4 was paid off. This came at great risk because of response time and availability. The past 2 years have been very stressful for me, knowing that we weren't able to adequately protect some of our citizens and their property as we have previously. That we're no longer providing our firefighters with the safety of the resources that we have for decades. The truck that we are finalizing to offer to you as a recommendation is expensive. However, in comparison to other ladder trucks, it's one of the less expensive models available. My greatest concern for 3 years has been, how are we going to pay for it? I realize that it is a purchase which will serve the town for 30 to 40 years. That doesn't make paying for it any less painful. I can assure you of this: there are no extravagant options on this truck. The two options that I have selected to include at expense is the independent front suspension and cameras over the stabilizing outriggers. Those two items are extra, but I believe are worth it. We have considered a used ladder truck, but we are leaning against it. Since our current ladder, they no longer manufacture a ladder truck with a 100-foot aerial on a single axle. This means in order to maintain a ladder with a minimum of 100 feet extension, we would have to enlarge our truck to a tandem rear axle. This would be more difficult for our department to handle, and one of our concerns has been maneuverability around some of our streets, our narrow streets and narrow roads in our village. This larger chassis could also affect parking in our station. Or the other option would be, if we went used, is to drop to a 75-foot extension to maintain a single axle truck. The truck we're recommending has been manufactured for less than 10 years, and there are no used ones available. For decades, there has not been a viable replacement plan in place for the fire department. The purchase of used trucks in between new trucks presented challenges that I inherited. I have done my best to be frugal and responsible at the same time. In the past, we've done things such as combining two trucks into one to alleviate one issue, but we were still looking to have to replace the aging ladder. Some of the questions that I've been presented, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Number one was, why can't we rely on another town to supply our aerial services to our town, as we have for the last 2 years? The last 2 years we've been lucky. I hope our luck continues. Every one of our mutual aid towns, we rely on each other, but they have the same issues that we have as far as staffing, personnel, getting people that can actually run the equipment. We may or may not get a response. They're not required to respond. If we needed them, we hope they come. We hope when they call us, we're able to go. There's no guarantee that a ladder truck will come from another town. We just can't guarantee it. I was asked about the ISO rating, and I have contacted ISO. We are currently a 5, 9, 10 ISO town. And what the question was how would our rates change if we didn't have a ladder truck?
Paul, you might want to explain what ISO rating is.
Pardon me.
You're just assuming we all know.
ISO is the insurance service that provides ratings to the insurance companies, which your rates, your fire portion of your home insurance is based upon. So each town has a rating, and it's on 1 to 10. 1 is the best, 10 is the worst. Our 5 is in our hydrant district. Anywhere there's a hydrant, we are a 5. Outside of that hydrant district, we are a 9. If anybody lives farther than 5 miles from the fire station, any fire station, Friendship, Jefferson, Noblesboro, if you're more than 5 miles from a fire station, you're an automatic 10. So that's where our 5, 9, 10 comes. And what we're trying to find out is if we didn't have a ladder truck, because we get a lot of credit for it, I don't know how to translate that credit into dollars. That's up to your individual insurance companies. But I can tell you this, in all honesty, you're not gonna save enough as this truck's gonna cost. This truck is expensive. And the amount of money we're gonna save on our insurance isn't gonna equate. Does that make sense? I'm a sucky salesman, sorry.
You may invert it, you may have inverted it, Paul.
But it's, anyway, you're not gonna save more on your insurance than you're gonna pay in for the truck. With that, what Craig just said, the tax bill. It has been my plan all along. The reason we've gone 2 years without it, and I didn't come 2 years ago, is because I said I didn't want to have two debt services going at the same time. So Engine 4's debt service was paid off this year. That's why I'm here now. And Julie will have to work out the final numbers and let you know where we're at. But my intention is that it will have no effect on the mill rate. And the reason I'm hoping that is based upon what we have been putting into the capital, combined with the debt service of Engine 4, should offset. You're not gonna save any money, but it hopefully will be the same. That was my intent, and she's gonna have to help us work out where we fall in that.
Well, and that's, so let's explain that a little bit further. Built into the budget for the last 3 to 4 years was the debt service payment for the last truck. And what has happened in Waldoboro is, historically, you save money in your budget for years to make a capital purchase. The budget committee is going to meet early this year and have some actual conversation about debt. Probably, in my opinion, as a former finance officer and a longtime town manager, is you are then charging people for something that they're not ever going to see, potentially. So for 3 years, we've been putting away money for a truck that somebody could have moved in and left, instead of financing it. So those are two different theories. So although you're saying, you know, there's no debt service, technically you were, in a way. You could look at it as pre-debt service. Probably when there was interest rates as low as 0.25, probably should have borrowed money to do some of your capital. And I'm sorry, but that's,
Should have done.
you know, in 2008 through 2013, when money was cheap, that's when you should have invested in your infrastructure and your vehicles and major purchases. So that being said, from Paul's standpoint and from my standpoint is, you are not going to see an increase in those budget line items. So even though it's capital, it's still pretty much a debt service payment. You're just prepaying your debt. So it's not something that's going to increase that. That expense is still going to be in the budget. Now, if we carry that out for 10 years, that would be doable. If you carry it out for 15 years, then you might have a little bit more wiggle room. But that's the discussion that we're going to have with the budget committee, and how to move forward with that, and those types of funding of projects. But the mill rate, again, in the budget, you're not going to see that increase. And that's something that I think Paul needs to be congratulated for, because he thought ahead on that. That being said, we still have purchases that have to be made too.
That was my next statement, was, while I said that, doesn't mean that anything out there in any of our garages here are getting any younger.
Right.
We have one truck that's an '89. You know, it's far outlived its service, but thanks to people like Dick Glidden and Johnny Daigle's crew and people that are here, and we take good care of it. I'll put that '89 truck up against a lot of other departments' newer trucks any day. but it's not getting any younger. And so, realistically, I'm saying within 7 years, we're gonna have to look at that. At that point, it will affect your mill rate, you know, depending on how the budget committee and everybody decides to go forward. But for the initial start for this particular truck, that was my goal, was to try to minimize that as much as possible. I mentioned about relying on mutual aid. One of the things about the particular truck that we had here, and some of you got to see, one of the reasons we went with it is because of the ease of operation. All of us are struggling with volunteers. I don't care what organization it is, whether it's the fire department or Rotary Club. Everybody is struggling for volunteers, including us. And one thing about this truck is that it is a smaller chassis size, and it's easier to maneuver, and we can operate it with fewer people. It's a single axle. Therefore, I am not concerned about any of our current driver operators operating this truck. If we had to go to a larger truck, I would be more concerned, because that's quite a different when you go a whole nother axle going up. So that's one thing that I am thinking of. So does anybody have any?
Could you just talk a little bit, because the night that we had the truck here, I think people are just saying, well, you know, you've got sprawl block and it's a brick building and nothing can happen. But we have a lot more than just sprawl block. So could you maybe get into the areas that you might potentially use the truck?
I do. Starting with the sprawl block. Our old truck, because of its age and the technology, has come so far. Our old ladder truck, we could only operate off the front or the rear. You couldn't go off the sides because the truck would tip over. So if you couldn't get the truck into someone's driveway aimed at their house, we couldn't use it. This truck will operate 360 degrees the whole way around. When we pulled up on Friendship Street that evening, I asked for the truck to be parked in a particular spot, and the representatives from the company didn't want it there because they wanted to show it off somewhere else. But even when I threw the wrench in their plans, they were able to reach every window of the sprawl block without moving the truck. For us, that's huge, being able to do that. Some of the other areas, we went up on Marble Ave, behind the post office. We have a 3- and 4-story, depending on what side of the building you're on. It's 3 on one side, 4 on the other. Apartment house, wood frame apartment house. The truck set in the road, reached all the way to the top windows of the residences in the back, and we had 14 feet left over from it. And we could reach every window on that narrow street. That was one of the areas I was concerned about, because it's a narrow, tight corner, getting in around there, and maneuvered fine. Concerned about our newest apartment going up, down over the laundromat. 4-story wood frame structure, one means of egress coming out of it. All of our downtown areas. This truck also has a pre-pipe water line. With our current truck, we have to connect a hose to it, pull it up, supply water to the tip. This truck has a nozzle built on to the tip. So say we should have a fire in a structure, we can protect a neighboring structure, whether it's a church, school, a lumber yard. We can put this up over and it would spray water down, similar like we did at Mr. Butler's house. Yep. Down there to protect his barn. So it'd be the same idea, but it's pre-piped. We don't have to do the work. That's why we can do it with less people. Our schools, our new middle school is multi-story out there. None of our ground ladders would reach the peak out there at that school.
I love about parking on Main Street and leveling that truck off and reaching right over to the Waldo.
Yeah. But another concern, as you all know, Waldoboro is nothing but a hill. And so ladder trucks need to be level in order to operate. So that was one of my concerns. So Dale took his crew, took the ladder truck up in front of the Waldo Theater, put it in park. With pushing one button, the truck leveled itself, leveled it up. We put the ladder right up to the roof of the Waldo Theater on the Main Street hill. So I feel it meets a lot of our needs. Checks a lot of the boxes that we need. So, any other questions, comments?
Katie?
I got a chance to look at this firsthand. I'm a little impressed with this thing. When we were down on Sproul Block, they parked the car, the truck, the truck, and then out the side came these things and down. The levelers, are those the levelers?
Stabilizers.
And then in the back of the truck, another leveler came out. And then the ladder went up from there to one corner of Sproul Block, 100 feet. Came back down and went up the other direction, 100 feet, and came back down. And up on top where all the controls are, it's a rotating disc. And they can rotate that ladder any which way but loose. And I was very impressed with it. And then when we took it up to Marvel Lab, tight. We didn't know if that truck was gonna get up that street. It was very tight. It made it. Those levelers came out, everything was secured, and out comes the ladder to the 4-story structure. Impressed. I even got to get up on I even got up to the rotated, the control place up there. I climbed up there and it was I was very impressed with that. Very impressed. So it's a nice truck. I even got to ride in it on the way home, so, and it was very nice. It was very, no jumping around or jouncing around or anything. You should see the inside of this thing. It's great. It's wonderful. It had all the buttons and whistles and that you could ask for, I guess. I liked it, so. Thank you.
John?
Let's get right to the point. What's the bottom line cost?
990. It was 990.
1 mil.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to say first that I've been a proponent of a ladder truck in the town of Waldeboro for over 30 years. I was part of the department that volunteered our income when we got the used ladder truck, the American LaFrance, and we bought that for $10,000, if my memory is correct. Billy was part of it, and other members who are here may have been part of that. We have not, to my knowledge, included a ladder truck in our capital plan because we looked at its use as important but intermittent. And that now you're embarking on a program that should have policies, standards, procedures, and should be studied before you spend and purchase the most expensive piece of equipment this town has bought to date. I'm hoping that an outcome of review and meeting might be to step back a minute and say, yes, from the fire department's viewpoint, they've done a great research to try and fit a ladder truck to the town. They've brought it to the town, they've shown it to you. It does look like their research for buying a truck, they've picked out something good, and I compliment the fire department, Chief Smelser, and everyone for the work you've done. What I'm asking is, where's the comprehensive study, where's the support, where's the review that backs the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen and the town for embarking on this new policy? We usually have been conservative. You touched on program of acquisition. I belonged to the old-fashioned group that thought it was wiser to pay cash than borrow. And yes, it means that those who came before paid for those who enjoy the benefit. It's a philosophy. I'm concerned with the lack of, or my perception. I'm concerned with my perception of the lack of outside study of need. And I ask before you spend $1 million for this town, make sure we need it. Make sure it is truly a capital item that now will come into our program. And now you will be funding it not for 15 or 20 years. You will be funding it for the duration. You will be funding it the same level as you're funding the other 4 engines, 5 engines that are out in the bay, of which one is 28 years old, one is 22 years old. Those are serving us well. Those were good pieces of equipment, and they were bought with the intention of not going 20 years, but of going 35 years. They'll make it. But when they're done, and they do need to be replaced. And as you bring this equipment on board, it's not a one-time purchase. You're bringing capital equipment in, and you need to have the policies, procedures, and the assurance that it truly is necessary. It would be great, and it would be something that the firemen in the town certainly can take great pride and ownership. My question is it truly necessary, and do we have the proof that we can look at each other straight in the eye and say, yes, it's warranted, we do need it, the taxpayers will back it, and move forward? Thank you.
Just to address some of your concerns, because I don't think you were at any of the budget meetings that we had, but we had an extremely good group of individuals this year, I think, on the budget committee. It was my first budget. My department heads were awesome. We talked extensively, and I upset the apple cart with the budgets. I really did, I think. We had a whole new level of transparency, and as far as their tasks, they're going to be put to work a little bit more. I just don't need them for 3 meetings. I think we all supported that idea, that we're going to get them really involved in the capital aspect of it and the debt service aspect of it, because, you know, we need that. The 10-year capital plan that we're developing and all of those things that we're going to be doing with the budget committee are exciting. So it might be some of your perception that we're kind of not
Mine is more
doing
an
it.
outside review of the fire apparatus.
Well,
within
and
the
that, I think
town.
that's something that's going to probably come up during that review. And I think that I appreciate where you're coming from, and you're right, you're more of the old school. I'm looking at 0.25% borrowing capacity, so I think we're probably in the same school, just same church, different pew. But just rest assured, I think that's something that's going to be thoroughly reviewed by the budget committee and gone over by the select board also, before any purchase is made. It's not something we're going
I beg
into
your pardon,
blind.
But I don't think that the review that I'm suggesting.
No,
would
I
be
perfectly
something that would be
understand.
carried out by the members
I
here or the
perfectly
budget
understand what you're saying to me. What I'm saying to you is I think that's an item that would be discussed at the budget committee and select board level.
committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I have a follow-up question really to what Carl has pointed out. The question I have is, Paul, what's more important? A new ladder truck or an expanded and refurbished and modernized fire station?
Well, there's been no discussions as far as a fire station, so I'm a little,
Well, you saw how hard it was to back that truck in there, and that was a single
Did.
axle. I mean, it had maybe 2 inches of clearance from the top.
yeah, when I met with the comprehensive plan committee,
Yeah.
back when we were discussing that, because one of the issues that we've had in the town as a whole has been space issues of it. And my suggestion to them at the time was back to the ISO, remember ISO class a few minutes ago? If we get back there, remember I said anybody that's more than 5 miles outside of town from a fire station, you're an automatic 10. What I've suggested the comprehensive plan is that we look at tax-acquired properties in those areas. I've identified 3 of them in the areas. And some of our space may be if we work with those neighborhoods to construct mini substations where we would house one of our trucks there. Number one, it would help with the space issues here. It would help them with their personal ISO ratings in those neighborhoods. That was the only real research I've done as far as building and changing anything in the station. You know, there are grants out there, and if I was gonna do anything to the station, that's where I would start, would be through that process. You know, there's a lot going on there. Fire station would be great for the firemen. I think every one of us would say it's updated fire station would be great. But that fire station isn't gonna help us get downtown and save anybody from a third story any faster.
Okay, it was an issue of priorities, and that's all I'm raising with you at this
I think he
point.
was saying life safety trumps
Yeah, and I-
comfort.
Yep, I hear it. Okay, any other,
I think Craig had.
No, Bob actually addressed it. I was questioning the size of the door for the truck. Is it gonna fit?
It is gonna fit. One thing that we did since that night, we did two things. One was the size of the tires. I went to Skowhegan, they have the same truck. They went up there, they have the same issue we do, as far as the height of the station. They put on different tires. We gained 1.5 inches on the different tires. And also with the suspension on the rear, gained us another inch. So we now have 4.5 more inches than we did before, so.
okay. Yes, ma'am.
If I could ask a question, my first awareness of the ladder truck issue, being someone new in town, my name is Tara Pilo, I live on Dutch Neck, was actually more of a business-related conversation. My understanding was that the purchase of the ladder trucks might, and you explained it very clearly with the ISO rates, might actually make the business insurance rates look a little more attractive while we try to develop those business rates and bring new business opportunities to town. Was that something anyone still felt was viable or a potential reason to go forward with this?
It is, but I just want to be very careful that I'm clear that the cost of the truck, I think, is going to be much more than you're going to save in insurance. So yes, it's going to make your insurance rates better, but it's still an expensive truck. So yeah, you will see some savings in your insurance, but not enough to cover the whole cost of the truck. But yes.
But you are going to see a lot of different impacts.
Yes, you will, yes, thank you.
Is there anyone else who has a question or a comment to make?
You guys have been seeing it, been there, what do you have?
I'd like to say that, I'm Dale Smith, I'm the deputy, if you don't know. The truck we had in here to drive is just as easy to drive as any of the vehicles we have up in there. It's easier than the current ladder we have to drive. We can get proficient at that. We'll have that ladder set up in 2 minutes to be able to do a rescue. And if you've never climbed over a ladder, anybody that's worked on roofs or come out a window over a ladder, the worst thing is stepping off that building onto the ladder. Would you rather step off on a 24-foot or a 35-foot ladder like this, or a ladder that's almost like a stairway? And that's what that ladder will give a rescue person a better chance of getting that person out the window. And like I said, it's a much faster setup. To be able to take this thing and pull out 2 sets of pads and press a button, and the ladder just comes up, levels itself, gets ready to go. You get up on the turntable and off you go. And it's a quick moving ladder, and it does a lot. And everybody, if you don't know, should know that a fire will double in size every minute. So if it only takes 2 minutes to set that ladder up, we gain time. And this, I want to address the comment about intermittent use of it. All our trucks are intermittent use. Everything we use on the fire department, insurance is intermittent use. You hope you never have to use it, but boy, you're glad you got it. You got it. And engine 2 was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, probably the most expensive, most was spent on an engine since the last time. And every year they get more and more expensive. This ladder isn't a state of the art, but boy, it's nice compared to what we've had. So, just, thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Again, I go back to the study and the need, and I will state from my experience, because that's all I can state. In the 20 years I was on the fire department, luckily, we never did a rescue. In the 20 years on the fire department, we used the ladder truck for a water curtain that saved the building adjacent to Sam Cohen's office 2 feet exposure. Wonderful use, absolutely. We've used it for water curtains to access chimneys, access points when we were putting out fires. Very useful piece of equipment, good piece of equipment. I still go back to measuring needs, measuring response time, having a solid sense as to whether the investment of the $1 million plus, because it's not $990,000. It's $990,000 to purchase. Then it will be X amount of money for its maintenance. It will be X amount of money for the staffing and manning, the policy of how do you maintain, making sure the staff is capable of operating it. And then it will be what means are you going to replace it with. If you plan on bonding every truck, then that's a policy change that this town will be entering into. And it is a true policy change. So we talk about safety, let's hope we never have to use it. Let's hope that it is, we're fortunate through whatever means. Things are sold to you on life safety. Practicality comes out in studies and uses and what are these trucks used for in sister communities? And just what is the practical use of the truck? Thank you.
Katie?
I like the idea of going out of town and putting, using buildings for these places that are out and about, too far away from the center of town. This is just an option. Can the purchase of this truck be teamed up with other towns that don't have a ladder truck? Could they partner up with us to the purchase of this truck? Just a question.
Which, you want me to go there?
Well, I'll start and you can go.
Okay.
We sort of have that agreement. As you know, Waldeboro does not have a tank truck. We've never had a tank truck. And the last 3-4 chiefs, 65 years, we've never had a tank truck.
Well,
But every,
we've had a tank truck.
how many gallons?
No, it was more than 500. I'm trying to.
It wasn't a tank truck. It was called a tank truck, but it wasn't a tank truck because it only had 1,000 gallons, right?
1,015, yeah.
All our trucks out there have 1,000 gallons except for engine 4 is 750. In order to be a tank truck, you gotta have 2,500 or more gallons to be classified by ISO as a tank truck. We don't have one, never have had one, but all our mutual aid towns have tank trucks. They don't have ladder trucks. Waldeboro had a ladder truck. We have a ladder, they have tank trucks. That's the mutual aid.
Give and take.
That's the mutual aid part. We're there for them, they're there for us.
And that was a question that was asked that night when we were demonstrating it. We also had fire chief, well, 2 fire chiefs from actually, we had 4 fire chiefs from neighboring communities come also. And I think, getting back to this outside study, I think I've commissioned them several times to have them come in and look at departments. That's also money you're putting out to have them commissioned. The mutual aid, that's something that is very common in the fire service. Not so much as we've learned, sharing services is not so common in Maine. It's something that the fire service, I don't care where you go, which state it is, does extremely well. I think that is something that we should tout, something that we should actually work towards more in other services and communities. But it just isn't viable to say, well, come and donate, and you can use it too. I think the way we do it with the tanker and how it's worked is a good thing. And I think that's the proper way to go about it.
That was just a question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put it
It was a
out
good
there.
question.
Because not everybody here was there that night when
Right.
that truck was being on
Demoed.
yeah. But anyway, that was just a question.
Thank you.
So this
ladder truck that we own, that sits in the fire department, is useless to us, because it won't pass state
Partially,
inspection.
partially. It'll pass state inspection, it won't pass its certification as an aerial
Well,
device.
certification.
So we can use it to haul our equipment. We take it to car accidents, we take it to fires, and we use all the other equipment off of it. We just can't put the aerial device up in the area currently. And if you're going to how much is it worth or how much we're gonna get for it, we've been told whatever the scrap will give it to us. You gotta understand, a lot of these departments, not a lot. There are departments that, I was in Keene, New Hampshire this week looking at their ladder truck. Met with their chief and deputy chief. They replace them every 15 years because they're worth something. Waldoboro, we don't. As Carlton said, we keep them 30, 35 years. But when you do that, you gotta understand
They
there's
have
nothing
no
left.
value.
There's nothing left when we're done with them. But we do take care of them and we get a lot out of them, so.
What happened to the certification in the ladder? What happened to the fly? What was the outcome of?
What happened in the fly was, number one, American LaFrance, our current ladder trucks in American LaFrance, they went out of business. What's happened is over the years, the fly, every time it goes out, it's metal, it rubs, and the metal got thinner. So it got down below its thickness allowance that it's allowed to have. So there are some people out there, we've taken it and had it looked at and said that they think they can fix it. But in order to have it certified, it has to be done by manufacturer specifications, and American LaFrance doesn't exist, so nobody will give us a certificate to repair it, to operate it. They'll do the work, they'll fix it. I'll climb that ladder right now. You go put it up, I'll climb it. And I'm sure these guys will be right behind me. There's nothing wrong with the cussed ladder. But we don't have a piece of paper to say we can use it.
And if something happens, we're not insured.
Correct.
Not to mention
I'm telling
people
you,
coming down
there's
that, not to mention people coming down the ladder.
Just like our SCBA bulbs. Just because they're 15 years old, we have to get rid of them, even though there's nothing wrong with them. At $1,000 a piece.
Any other comments or suggestions, observations? Okay, do you have anything else, Paul?
No, just thank you for your questions and your input.
I just want to say thank you to Paul and the entire department. The night that they did demo the truck, they were absolutely fabulous. Truly, they've had the last call down on Dutch Neck with the gas explosion. I listened to that call from start to finish over the radio. I was on the phone with another chief in a neighboring town. Between our EMS, who were phenomenal in assisting the victims of that fire, and Paul, just the level of professionalism. And I've listened to a lot of fires in my career. I don't say that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but just the level of professionalism on that call by the chief and his staff and the EMS department was phenomenal and impressive.
And the police.
And the police department too. I just didn't hear them on the radio.
Every individual that showed up there at that call didn't do what they were trained to do. I gave everyone assignments. The firemen didn't get to be firemen. The cops didn't get to be cops. EMS is the only ones who got to really be EMS people, but anything that could be thrown at us was thrown at us, and every single person on that scene was phenomenal.
They really were, and you guys don't get to see it, and hopefully you never get to see it, but somebody in my position gets to see it quite a bit, and then I hear about it the day after. I literally was listening to James Bodman. I'm going to give him a shout out, and I don't mean just to, but he was the one on the radio. The next day I walked in, I felt like I was walking in, Kyle was there. I felt like I was walking into a room of heroes, and I mean that. You know, day to day, these men and women risk their life, their health to save others. And I gotta tell you, especially that night, EMS, I walked into a room of heroes, and they are phenomenal people. And if you see them, you should thank them, because it's something that they do without regard for their own safety.
You're here.
Yes, sir.
I had a comment while we've been doing this, that 1 mil will take care of this. Is this the finance charge, or is 1 mil to the tax by the truck?
I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we've looked at the financing options.
Right.
We need to see what's available. I mean, there may not be any. You know, that's a dead end. But we need to look at what is available and then do the numbers. I mean, Paul set a structure up that would take what we're currently paying on, well, we were paying on the truck we've just paid off. That's a payment we've been making for the last umpteen years. You add to that what we've been setting aside for a new truck, add those together, and see what kind of debt service you get out of that with an interest rate. Maybe we end up leasing it and buying it. Maybe we don't do anything. But we need to look at what's available. And I take to heart what you said, Carl, about, I take that to heart. Thank you.
Well, at this point, I'm deeply concerned as to the generosity of previous firemen and the generosity of what has been done to keep a ladder truck in town. Because to me, it's being converted into something that the town really doesn't know that if it needs or not at this level. Because the purchases were 10 and 34,000. The purchases have never been $1 million.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
true.
different world.
That's true. It is. It is.
And that's the
I get
basis
it.
of my concern.
No, and I totally, and I think Paul, and I just want to say this too. This isn't something, and I've had chiefs, quite a few of them, and I've heard the thing where, they just want something new. In New Jersey, you get a new truck every 7 years. It's NFPA, that's what you get. That's, you come up here and you guys are keeping them 35 years. It's amazing, it's wonderful. This isn't just a case of an I want. And that to me is something, and I don't have any department heads that just want. And I just want to thank Paul, because he's taken this very seriously, and I will tell you, through every step of the process, every time we talk about this, I just want to do the right thing. It's a lot of money. I want to do the right thing. It's a lot of money. So I don't want anybody to leave here and think that it's a want, and it's just because I want it. I mean, a lot of thought has gone into it, and a lot of care and a lot of concern for the residents, not only for their life safety issues, but for the monetary and the tax impact. So I just want everybody to understand that he's really done a good job, and he does realize, and I think just as all of them realize, because I'm proud to say that all of these individuals that serve are residents too.
Yeah. Taxes, just like the
Right.
Yeah.
Could, Julia, maybe this is you, and maybe it's Bob or whoever, or maybe it's Paul. Can we outline, process going forward? What's the next steps here? What are our next steps? What, do we have a timeline? What needs to happen to arrive at a decision?
Well, I think what's going to happen next, well, I know what's going to happen next, is we have to explore the funding mechanisms. And that's something that we would get from the manufacturer. There's obviously a bid process.
Right.
There's funding mechanisms we have to look at, different options. And that's the stuff that we are going to go over, like I said, with the budget committee with. Hopefully late September, early October. I would anticipate if it actually goes to a purchase, if it gets to that point, you're looking at the first of the year.
Yeah.
So, we're further ahead. When I got here a year ago, this was the discussion.
Right.
We need to have the discussion. This was just the first step, is having the discussion. And I'm glad that happened to coincide with Shoreland, because to be honest with you, This is one of the fullest meetings in my year and 2 months that we've had, and it's great to see people engaged and here to talk about things.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And you guys don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to.
But since you are here.
But we like to see their faces.
They've all been, it's been a long day. But I just wanted them to know they could leave.
Article 7, 10, 16, planning board.
Okay. Shall I?
Yes, sir.
So before I jump ahead, I'll make sure I'm going to meet your expectations. I'm assuming that you want a sort of a review of the primary changes and sort of go through all of them. Not
Yeah,
all of them, but the primary changes that we've made to Article 7 and Article 10.
And questions, and I actually have some of my own
Great,
comments
yeah.
to make, and I'm
Oh,
sure
sure.
other members of the board do as
Sure.
well.
Sure,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And maybe for background for the public that's here as well, just try to summarize quickly the background. So the reason for changing Article 7 and Article 10 is that the state has changed in the intervening years since the last revision of Waldeboro to our land use ordinance, Article 7 and Article 10. The state has made changes to Article 7 and Article 10. And so the planning board was asked to revise those articles to conform with the state requirements. Waldeboro was allowed to have stricter requirements than the state, but we're not allowed to have looser requirements than the state. So that's the reasoning for that. So the planning board, along with help from Bill and Max, has been reviewing these two articles and trying to make sure that they conformed with the state. At the same time, we made, we've gone from heroic to commas and getting the tense right and stuff like that. We've tried to do our best to make the language as clear as possible. That, we made some changes in things that we thought were unclear, that we didn't understand well. We tried to make sure that they were clearer. That said, we did not make an overall attempt to take the ordinance and put it into common English, if you put it that way. It's still very much a land use ordinance, not legalese, but you know what I mean. The language is complicated. We didn't try to revise the whole thing. So if you're looking for clarity from that standpoint, you won't find it. For everyone's benefit, to make it clear, Article 7 is the shoreland zoning. Article 10 is, and if I can find my Article 10, Article 10 is called non-conforming uses. That means generally things that are grandfathered. They're in the shoreland, they're close to the water. It's generally grandfathered pieces of property and mostly structures that don't conform with the current ordinance. So those are grandfathered, so that's called non-conforming uses. So in Article 10, you'll see as you go through it, there's a large amount of strikeouts in Article 10. And that's been replaced basically with language, if you have it in front of you, with most of the audience don't, but the board does, on page 10.7. 10.7 starts an area called shoreland area expansions, and that section replaces all this deleted language. And it's basically just cleaning up and making clearer what you can do to modify a current structure that's too close to the water, that doesn't conform. It also eliminates a lot of language on very complicated, the existing ordinance has very complicated languages, how you calculate the structural area, and it's based on the height and volume, and so this is actually based only on the footprint of the building, so it's much clearer. The other thing that we've done at the bottom of page 10.8 is we've inserted a table that sort of summarizes the expansions that are allowed to buildings based on their adjacency to the water.
Is this a little more flexible than it was previously?
I believe that it is, but Bill,
It's mostly clear. In the past, we had to calculate a 30% expansion of area and volume, and that got kind of cumbersome. So the footprint method that we have is just simpler to do. Simpler for the public, it's simpler for the town to calculate.
So, but if I'm reading this correctly, in 4B, for example, if you've got a small clam shack sitting down 75 feet off the high water mark, and say it's 80 feet, and you want to add on to it, this allows you to add, because it's less than 100 feet, but more than 75 feet, you can add another 1,500 square feet onto that building, if I'm reading it right.
Yeah, there's a cap on the total footprint, and when we calculate footprint, we're calculating the footprint of all structures.
Of everything, including what's there.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you always have the option of, if you have a lot of small accessory buildings that are closed, you can make a choice and say, geez, I'm gonna keep 6 days or move these back and put my expansion effort into like the principal structure or something that I.
Yeah,
So you
I'm
have
not
that
being,
flexibility.
yeah, I'm not being critical, I
No,
just
no,
want to
no.
understand.
Oh, sure.
It just makes it much
What it lets you
easier
do.
Yep.
for everybody to figure out what they need
But-
to do.
And I will say, that we had a lot of discussion as a board, and really, in terms of public input, the input that we did get from property owners were people that had a place in their family for a long time down by the water, and they can't make it saleable because it's too small, or they want to make some change and they're really boxed in. And so I will have to say, I mean, we are very concerned about the adjacency to the water and the structures, but we didn't have, I don't think there was any feeling on the board that we ought to make this more restrictive than the state. I think most of the.
Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got an email from Barbara about this, about the manure storage and stuff.
That's in Article
Yeah.
7, we will get to that.
Yep, okay,
That's,
okay.
and I think,
Okay, because you
there's a
jumped
couple
ahead,
other-
so I was gonna go back, that's
no,
all.
there's a couple of other related sections, so
Okay.
if there isn't anything, I think most of the other things on, in Article 10 are just clarity
Okay,
related
Okay.
in wording. There's not a lot that's structural in Article 10.
I just have one other
Yeah,
question.
sure.
There's a reference to a date in Article 10 on 10/7. You're referring to a footprint that existed on January 1st, 1989. Does that have any significance? Why is that date chosen?
Yeah, that was, that date was put in, because that was when a significant change was made in the model ordinance. That was kind of a cutoff date.
Okay.
It's a
Before
grandfather
that,
date,
it
yeah.
was, I think, 1977 or something like
I
that.
get it.
Before-
Yeah.
So just to piggyback what Bob said, this is more user-friendly,
Yeah, it is.
like that.
Still be nice if there was a way to clear up clearing the the woodland stuff, but we'll get to that. So, moving on to Article 7, there's a lot in this that's, again, clarity changes, and a lot of these sections refer to other sections in the land use ordinance and within the article itself. And so there's a lot of those kind of cleanup things in here. There's another whole section that's been deleted regarding timber harvesting.
Right.
And that's been replaced with merely a reference to the state. And I'm sure you are all familiar with that, but for everyone's benefit, the state has given municipalities 3 options regarding timber harvesting in the shoreline zone. One is to let the state regulate it. 2 is a hybrid version where the state helps and the town's involved. And the third is that the town handles its own regulation of timber harvesting. And the town has opted to take option 1, which is to have the state regulate monitor the timber harvesting. And so that whole section has been removed. And there's a reference to the state, if I can remember where it is. That is.
Yeah, I think it's 16.
Page 718 is section. So timbers harvesting must follow the Bureau of Forestry Option 1 guidelines, and it refers to the forest rule.
Is there a website reference that's possible in there so that people might be able to go to the state website and find it more easily?
I think we should avoid that just because they change.
Yeah, we had a lot of these kinds of things here that we discussed as a board, and there's a lot of other examples in here. And we opted for the simplest language possible rather than the detail, because we found a lot of them in there that were in the old ordinance that were wrong because the state had changed where the things, so
Okay, thank you.
we ended up where Julie jumped, so took us a while, but we got there.
Long time.
So
Old and in the way.
there are 3 new sections that are all related to hazard and storm damaged trees. And defining what they are and what you can do with them, and then there's revegetation that you have to do. And so that is, where's all that? That's on page 723 and 24. There's exemptions. There's another section too that's, that I believe might be new, that is related to, roads, new roads aren't permitted. There's also a section on, in order to stabilize the shore, if you have to get access to the shore to stabilize it, you're allowed to sort of devegetate to get there, but then you have to revegetate afterwards. But it's allowed, but you have to make sure you clear it up and revegetate afterwards. So that's in there.
You're telling them about a place that's eroded?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's
a
only
lot
one
of
way
that
to,
around,
yeah, there's
yeah.
a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a new section on one, there's 1 dock per frontage limit per lot.
Yep.
But I think there's allowed for a second one if you have a lot that's large enough, but then you can't subdivide it afterwards, so.
Scott, there's no mention of the DMR. I mean, I remember we had a tree on a bank and it fell over, would have taken the bank with it. So we got permission to cut it down, but we had to go to the Department of Marine Resources to do that.
Oh, okay.
I haven't read any reference to that requirement in this ordinance.
No.
It's all done locally
Don't
now.
go to DMR.
All done
All you
locally.
need is, you would just contact the code officer and they'll
Right.
deal with
Well,
it.
that makes it a lot easier. A lot easier.
So, again, there's a lot of other minor clarity issues and references, and then, let me see, I want to make sure that I don't skip anything important before we get to this manure and other issue. So let's go there. So page 717 starts a section on, section 15 is on agriculture. And we had a lot of discussion as a board on this whole section, actually. Because the first part talks about manure and manure storage, and that's part A and B. Then part D is a tilling setback, and part E is setbacks for livestock grazing. So, as I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the old farms that go right to the river or whatever, it can be an issue. we had most of our discussion as a board regarding the manure guidelines. You know, and as Abden mentioned, you know, Barbara's letter, she was very concerned about the manure storage, which says it can't be stored or stockpiled within 100 feet, and suggesting that we make that bigger. It does say that it must be constructed in the storage areas can't produce any discharge or effluent. So that's a requirement for the manure storage in any case, but we still had quite a bit of discussion. And we were looking for guidelines like, well, if we make it bigger, how much bigger do we make it? And if we make it, are we really going to be doing, is it going to be added value to make it bigger? And we had some contact with some of the people, a guy at the Maine Extension Service, for example. I think Barbara contacted him for, like, what do you have? And there really wasn't anything to go by for us to change it. So we're not, I don't think the board's averse to changing it, but we stuck with the state because we didn't have any data to indicate that we do anything different.
All right.
But
I got some comments about
that
it
would be
because.
good. Well, I'd like to hear that. I guess the only one thing I want to add, though, also is that tilling and livestock grazing is also allowed to 100 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're grazing livestock at 100 feet, you're not containing or managing the effluent.
But that's
from
different
that
than having
manure
a big
production.
pile there, too.
Right, so.
That is the difference.
Right, so, so I think this is the one, it's certainly worth discussing this whole area, so if you wanted to, anybody else want to weigh in, go ahead.
Well, I think the biggest part too is when we redid this, when I was on the planning board for the 6 years I was there, we changed along the shores, the leach field had to be, I believe, 200 feet from shore.
I think 100 feet.
You sure about that? Because I thought we moved it back a lot further than that because to get, I'm pretty sure, you sure it's not more 200 feet? I almost think it is either 150 or 200 feet. And that's why I was saying this. I didn't realize that it was only 100 feet in here with agriculture, and it would be basically the same thing as having a leach field, you know. And with the grazing and stuff like that, when we had an issue with a farm in town, Department of Agriculture come in and they had them do a best management practice, which was 75 feet from the water to put a fence up. So, you know, that is different because they're grazing animals, not having a stockpile
Okay.
of manure.
But is that saying that they were comfortable with 75
Yep,
feet?
yeah, they set up the management practice for that, for the farm.
So 100 feet in terms of.
It is
grazing
over,
is-
above and beyond
Oh,
what
okay.
the
Okay.
Department of
That's good.
Agriculture actually recommended.
Okay.
For grazing, but
For
what are you,
grazing.
Yeah, no, I
but what
understand.
are you recommending for the manure pile?
Well, like I said, I thought we was 200 feet from shore with a leach field.
Can we
in
look
the
that up? real
shoreline
quick?
It
zone.
says, it says it right here on number, page 716, number 11,
But is that the new one or the old one?
This is the new one,
the new one.
100 feet.
It's 100 feet.
I think they ought to
Makes sense, 'cause we
align, but no matter what the number is, I think they ought to align with one another. so that
Right, and that's what
manure-
my point was,
Exactly.
and I thought
Yeah.
it was 200 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Because we had a huge discussion about that, because I wanted the septic systems further away, the
Yeah.
leach fields further
Same
away.
as the subsurface code, that's why it's,
Yep.
Okay.
So Abden, are you recommending that it be the manure and the septic systems be more than 100 feet?
Where the septic system is underground, it doesn't concern me quite as bad, but having a surface manure pile, it could be 18 yards, could be 100 yards.
So I'll
You know,
give you an
as far as-
example.
You know, so I'm just, it's gonna be surface runoff versus underground runoff.
Well, this is
Infiltrate.
saying that it's not allowed to have any effluent.
But I mean, if you get 2 or 3 inches of rain, you're not gonna stop it.
Well, yeah, that's, I guess that was the discussion we had at the board, was because it wasn't clear to us from this that if you have 2 horses and, you know, you collect the manure, that, you know, and how old it is, what
Right.
constant, like, you know, I get old manure, like, for example, I don't have a problem with adjacency to the water, but
Right.
I get old manure from my neighbors, it's already aged, it's already a year, you know, I get it, and
Yeah.
I store it, because to use on my plants the following spring.
Yep.
So it's already old, but it's still a manure pile, because
Right.
there's nothing in here, that was what.
Well,
Can
part
we-
of our
There's nothing
issue,
in here.
and I think part of the issue and what we're trying to do with the Madomic project is protect the river. So now we test. We've been testing for the E. coli. So I'll give you a great example of manure and issues. The dog park behind Bear Hill. That's a huge issue right now because that's some of our highest numbers on the river. And that's just a very small area, and it's huge. So a huge pile of it, even though it's 100 feet away, in a 2-inch rainfall that closes the clam flats, that could be huge. So it might be worth looking into, and I get your point about the subsurface doesn't concern you as much as the surface does. I think we should probably look at that.
Maybe
Sorry, let's get some people here.
maybe no greater than 10 yards of manure or 20 yards. Is that feasible?
Well, I'm perfectly, I mean, I'd be happy ad hoc, I don't
I'm just
think
asking
the board
because
minds
I'm
if we
just-
ad hoc change
Because
this
you
if
could
we
dump
wanted to.
3 trailer truck loads in there and
Right,
have 3 inches of rain within the week, and you're gonna get astronomical numbers.
Right, I
That's
think
my
the
concern.
concern is, but yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the only issue I think as a board we wrestled with was, what do we change it to that actually is going to help?
Right.
And if it's not putting a lot of more definition around the requirements and what it is and where you put it.
Is it worth putting Glenn on that to
It
talk to
becomes
the?
really problematic, and so far, we didn't get that much help from the state, so.
Yeah, I think we agreed that something needs to be looked at, but this is bigger than just shoreline. So the tack.
Oh, I
we
understand that.
recommended was,
Right.
We should have something that addresses the entire watershed. And there's a couple of things. The distance is one thing, but the containment and how well the containment system for the manure, how well it's constructed, and.
Well, most
is
people aren't gonna
important.
construct anything, they're just gonna come in, have a truck, dump it, and.
Well, but it's not supposed to be that way.
But that would
I
be,
understand
that would
that.
be allowed, because that's not.
I understand,
Yeah.
And
you know.
there's money available and expertise available for the farmers for
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And also, the third thing is some sort of inspection process. We do this now with stormwater systems.
But I don't-
They have to be looked at every period of time.
But
to make
I
sure
think
they're
that's
okay.
cumbersome too for a farmer as well, is having it come inspected all the time. Or having somebody that's bought manure to have it inspected. If you give them a guideline, say you can't have it more than 100 or 200 feet from the shore, that's plain and simple.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So I'm not really a member of the audience. I'm a plant, I guess. So yeah, member of the planning board. As part of the discussion, I'll just share a few of the comments that were raised. We kind of did an if-then. Scott is dead on when he talks about the fact that at the time we didn't feel like we had enough data to be more than just administrators of the land use ordinance change. You know, when you look at manure and you look at folks, you know, everybody's got their own situation, but you have 200 feet on Dutch Neck like most of the splinters, and then you have a little bit of wetland or a tiny stream that's not designated because it's not a tributary stream or it's not a wetland of 10 acres as defined in shoreland zoning. And then you're trying to stack your manure. We don't know how old it is because there's no guidelines there. And where do we put it? And how many homeowners are going to be affected? Have we pulled any data on that? So I just think everybody was so uncomfortable, and we do recognize the value of the river to this area. But ultimately, right, is it an arbitrary change that we're willing to make without any information? We're happy to make it going forward, but we need a little bit more information or guidance, even if you know, if anyone wants to offer up some ideas or work with Max to do a little more research. we're happy to do
And what
that.
would you do if the farmer didn't have enough land to meet whatever? What
Well,
do you do about that?
that's a good I mean, there was the grandfathering option, but we didn't, because we actually had a board member that said, I
Yeah.
can't get more than 100 feet.
Or whether
you know-
DACF would support, you know, whether that would override our land use ordinance and whether we'd have support at the state level to enforce.
If they might have best management practices that we mitigate.
Right.
The
And I'm
distance.
surprised Department of Agriculture didn't
Yeah, maybe we
have
can go to
anything.
the right place, so if
Yeah.
you have, if you.
Actually, Matt,
Yep,
Matt,
yep. I can get that
Yes,
information.
absolutely.
Or-
Because he's the one that wrote the plan for the farm that we
Right.
had an issue with.
Yeah, and I
I'll
think
tell you
as
who it
Bill
is.
said, it is like it is an overall, not just these articles, just a shoreland issue,
Yep,
but an
we can
overall
put you onto
issue.
the right person that
Because I think,
probably has the
I think the
answers.
point that you made, right now, it all matches in terms of it's the same,
Right,
it's the
see,
same 100-foot
yep.
limit for all these.
Matt
There's
Randall.
a consistency to it.
Yeah, Matt Randall at
Matt
Department of
Randall.
Ag. Yep.
I have his, I'll give it to Bill and Max.
Okay.
I'd be more conservative than Abden. I just think that anything that endangers that river or shuts those guys off for a day
Sure.
because we weren't careful enough
Right.
is not worth it. If someone's gonna keep horses or cows and graze them down by the river, that's fine. But they ought to be aware and reminded continually that the priority for this town is the river. It's not the cows and the horses. It just isn't. That river's gotta be clean, or as clean as we can possibly make it. It's
clean.
not a matter of, well, it is a matter of priority. It is a simple matter of priority, and the river is king, as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal view. And anything we can do to increase the buffer, to ensure that there is very little possibility of contamination and runoff because of a faulty storage facility. If it's just a sec, Katie.
Yeah, I
If
know.
it's a faulty storage facility, we're not gonna learn about it
Until it's too late.
Right.
until it's too late.
And then we
Exactly.
lose an
It's
area,
gonna
we
be
lose
the
it for
house,
5
the-
years.
The horse will be out of the
Minimum.
barn.
Right.
And I just don't think it's worth betting on that or gambling with that. That's my view.
So why don't we do some research on this?
Yeah, we need a
Yeah.
we have to balance, agriculture is important.
Oh, yeah,
The
of
planning, we have to
Right.
work together there's a win-win here for everybody.
What is the drop dead date to have this adopted?
Well, we would need your approval to get it, today, to get it on the November ballot.
But is there, what's the necessity to get it on the November ballot?
Could we have a special town meeting?
Well, you could have a special town meeting for it, too.
Because,
But I guess the board's been working with this date moving forward. So they're ready, except for this one issue. And this issue in particular needs to be looked at, not just in shoreline zoning. It does need to be looked at throughout the town. And if we're just gonna pick numbers,
Right.
we're shooting off the hip. We don't, that's not how we do things in zoning. I mean, it's unfair to everybody.
Right.
Well, there is the issue here of conforming our ordinance to the state requirements, which we can do, and then separately, we've got an overall
Yeah.
land use ordinance
Right.
issue to address
So we-
this and the river safety,
Didn't answer your question.
that you could, we could address, because you can change it again, but as a special,
Julie, I didn't answer your question. Does this have to go to November?
well, because we also have concern from Eileen that it's $1,720 to put this on the November ballot, whereas it would be no cost in June.
Except there are some people who are waiting for relief on the construction part of this. They have little structures down close to the water and they're getting older.
Is there
and
anything coming
they-
in, because I believe they probably have to go, is there anything in the planning?
Well, we have
Department.
an ordinance review committee that's gonna start.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as anybody doing construction that's heard, waiting for this to change to have, so I don't think
I know of
it's-
at least one person who is.
There is, but,
Yep. Sorry, Katie, you wanted to say something.
but
Two things to take away from this that I am hearing. Number one is, somebody has a piece of property down by the river. You don't know where the streams are, if there's any on it, or even little things. I mean, you have a big storm, and that little thing is gonna be a big thing. You don't know the geography of these lands.
I do.
Okay?
I've been to every one of them.
Or you have not.
Yeah.
And number
I've been
two.
to every one of them. There's
number-
like 40 some odd runoff spots. Yep, there is.
Number two is,
more than that, probably.
how do you
Yeah.
know who has these manure piles? I mean, somebody could drop
don't.
2 pickup
We
loads
don't.
of manure on somebody's land,
Right.
and nobody's gonna know that it's there.
You don't, and that's what the testing's about. That's why we're doing it on our own, so that we can prevent an issue before it gets
Well,
started.
can something like that be put in the
Well,
ordinance saying, you know?
I think
This
we're
is-
getting way far
Yeah.
afield, but I think what we're hearing is, if this doesn't have to go, I mean, if this doesn't have to go in November, you know, to save the $1,720, which I'm glad we have a price tag for it, then it could go in June, or we could do a special. Is that gonna be offensive to the planning board?
I don't know what the state's requirements are to have
I
our
mean-
ordinance conform in terms of.
Yeah, they're not pressuring us at this moment in time, and if we tell them, you know, it's here, we're just waiting, I don't think we're gonna be under the gun to do that. It's just one thing, the board had worked diligently to get it to the.
No, they've done an excellent job.
Right.
Don't get me
Right,
wrong, this
right.
is just, you've guys
But it would
done
give
an
us
excellent
time,
job.
it would give us time to resolve that issue.
That's right, but we're also, we're gonna resolve that issue not in this ordinance. We're gonna
Right.
resolve this issue in our
But
larger.
shouldn't the shoreland in our larger ordinance,
Well, again.
mirror each other to
Shoreline
some-
only affects, as Tara said,
Right.
certain
Green
water
shot.
lines. And we need something that's.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
I've been waiting for this so bad.
And I think this whole issue arose because of a gentleman down on our side of the river, I guess, who has a piece of property that he'd like to sell, and improvements he'd like to make.
But I don't think that's
We
why-
don't meet the state,
I don't.
so his hands are tied, shall we do something?
well, I don't think that was the impetus between, for the planning board to take that up. I think the planning board was
It
asked,
had a lot to do with it.
yeah. Baby?
I'm leaving, yeah.
Potential grandbaby leaving. Good night.
I'd feel, well, I would opt for a special town meeting on this, and get it done as quick as we can, and just have a special town meeting. It doesn't cost us anything.
I'm
And
fine with
those-
that.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
A special town meeting after, you're talking about a special town meeting after November?
No,
No,
I'm
anytime.
saying ASAP, as soon as we can get this one issue resolved.
So we don't
Have
have
it in
to.
October,
what issue resolved?
the agriculture. And, sorry, I just needed to clarify, is this
Yeah, I'm not
commercial agriculture we're talking about here?
It's just agriculture itself, there is no,
It's not defined.
yeah.
No.
And storage, that's another question that I had. What constitutes storage?
Great question.
Well, I mean, you know, you get a pile dumped in your,
We need Randall to come.
Well, that's
We need him to
the
get
But
issue,
Randall
I
down.
think. is
and then you
getting
use
some
it,
kind of
but it's
guidance.
not, I mean, I understand manure storage for a farmer.
Well,
Well, this is
there's two
But-
items, there's
Yeah.
manure storage, but the shoreline zoning also
Yep.
regulates any kind of manure treatment or placement in that 250 feet.
Yeah.
So they're also saying that if you're gonna be putting manure on the ground, it's gotta be set back 100 feet.
But I do think a special.
So it's both the storage,
up to
the
you guys.
placement, or temporary storage, it doesn't really matter.
And the biggest reason why I bring this up too is if we lose an area because of pollution, say, we have to meet a criteria of the number 31.
Yeah, you do.
If we say get a 400 for a number, we have to have 30 good samples in a row, and they only take a well, fortunately, Waldeboro's been so proactive, we get a sample every month. Most places only get sampled 6 times a year. So it could take potentially up to 5 years before you get that area back, to reduce that number back down to 31. And that's why it's so critical to make sure that this is where it needs to be to protect it.
Which leads me to, sorry,
No, go
I
ahead.
just had a question I think is important, would be important to me relative to this, other than, because to me, it's a lot more about, it's about a lot more than changing this number. Because changing this number doesn't do any good if somebody doesn't know
Right.
anything about this, and they get a load of manure, and they have it dumped in the wrong place. Or, and so, related to that, since you know a lot of these estuaries, is how many places are we really talking about, and how many pieces of property or people with livestock or animals is really affected by this? And I know we have agriculture going on in the town, but there's, everybody knows where the estuaries are, you can look at the map, but I have no feeling for where all the agriculture is and where all the livestock is in town. Because there's probably just a limited number of places that would be affected by this. And maybe we could make it 200 feet without causing
Affecting-
too many people a whole lot of
Affecting-
damage, but, so I guess my point and my plea would be, in addition to getting some contact with agriculture about this manure issue with the tilling and grazing, having some idea of what's really going on where in the town, and having some way of making this more visible to people, that the importance of these kind of issues.
Yep.
Otherwise, changing the number isn't
Right.
necessarily gonna help us.
Yeah, I think we need more research on this, get more information before we,
If I do more outreach too, just thinking.
Yes,
spitballing
and
at,
that too.
the vets or the
Yeah.
Blue Seal place and stuff, just talk to people as they come in.
and then what, yeah. And then
Because
once you
they're not
find out
always
the
reading this
places, that will,
Well, is there,
that's right.
how do we, who knows of all the this relative to getting an idea of what's going on in terms of agriculture in town, who has that information?
Well, Daryl might have some of it.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
we would want an inventory of agriculture activities. The Department of Ag has some limited information. We probably know more.
Than they do.
And what is considered agriculture?
Well, we can figure all that out.
But it's not gonna happen by October.
No, I don't think
This
so.
is gonna take a while
Yeah,
to do
it's-
on that. One thing to keep in mind, if we change anything to do with farming or agriculture, we have to submit that change beforehand to the Department of Ag for approval, and then get their approval, and then we.
But I think having Department of Ag involved in it, they'll know. And that's Matt, like Julie said, Matt Randall's the one we dealt with the farm issue we had in town.
Yeah.
And actually, like I said, wrote up the management plan for that town. too.
And maybe we have him come to a planning board meeting.
If you want the planning board to handle it, we can.
Yeah.
If you think that's our purview.
Yep.
And maybe have representatives from the Shellfish Committee there that night.
Yep.
Like the chair and the vice chair.
You submitted the ordinance changes, so.
Yeah,
It might.
we did go through Abden on the shoreline on
Yep.
this month.
I didn't think there was any issues, so, if I remember right. But like I said, I thought we was 200 with the leach fields, so.
And I just make one comment on the tilling. I would think it would be horizontal along the river and not vertical, and I think that ought to be approved.
You would hope
specifically.
so, yeah, okay.
Well, it's
Yeah.
not there, so
No, it's not.
you're not telling them how to do it.
We adopted this, again, we adopted the state
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
Oh, what does the state know?
So I take it you're not gonna want this to go to November?
No.
It may happen in November, maybe in late November with a special town meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would still
won't
say,
be on the
It's gonna take a
ballot.
little more time.
It's gonna
That's
take
fine.
some time.
Let's just save us $1,720. So,
crap.
Well,
that's,
yeah.
Well, again, if you have somebody who's being held up, you can take the option of.
You've got to stop
Weakness.
that.
We have to address
Get
this
way
issue.
too
and the
into
whole
it.
ordinance as a-
Can
the
we-
land use ordinance as a whole, we
the
can
same
change,
guy
we
who's
change it
been
when we
here?
know
Yeah,
something.
we got to just stop.
can we
that.
approve this
No.
without the change?
No,
No.
we need to have the whole thing.
You need
Okay.
to have the whole thing.
So, no conditions on it then?
And I,
Okay.
I think we need.
Well, you don't have to have a condition, you can just change it again later, because you'd have to have a meeting to cover the whole, anything else you do in the rest of the
Yeah.
ordinance that would cover this
I
issue.
think we need to just resolve it. I appreciate all the
Yeah.
work, but I think what has happened historically in Walterboro, and is one of my levels of frustration, is we try to rush things through because we want to get something accomplished. It's better to be right than quick. So I think we want it right. Let's do it right the first time so we don't have to come back, because invariably somebody will forget to come back.
My frustration is we're so close.
I know,
You know,
I know,
you've done
but
such a
let's
good job,
make
so.
sure it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I second
I
that.
do too.
Just my comment is the planning board has done an excellent
They
job.
have,
Yeah,
they have.
they
Thank you
have.
for being
A
here.
lot of-
And in a short time, and I have to say, Scott's leadership has been awesome.
Uh-huh, thank you.
He has been fabulous, and I think Scott, coupled with our Cracker Jack planning department, has been phenomenal. And the planning board as a whole, I just am so impressed. I've watched a couple of their meetings, and it's just such a breath of fresh air.
I would entertain a motion to table this to a future meeting.
Yes.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
We do need 2 more members, please. We only
Yes.
have, we only have 5. And so we just made a quorum at our last meeting because we had 4 members, 1 person couldn't make it. We're gonna hit a meeting with people applying and not have a quorum just because it's bound to happen. We only have 5 members, so please
Should we
help us.
reduce
I know
that
you're
number?
on it, but
7.
if, just for the public,
7 or 9.
if anybody is
Glad you mentioned that.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Scott.
willing to volunteer.
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
Could use some help.
10:03, Julie has a suggestion, and I think she's right, given the hour, that we move 10:04 and 10:05 to our next meeting, that we do 10:03 tonight, and then do
6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, and 8. Actually, 10:06 isn't quite right. We're all supposed to go to the Lincoln County meeting as the select board members to choose someone. So we can just leave 10:06 off of it. There won't be an appointment tonight.
I've been to those meetings.
Yeah, I've gone to them.
I've
too.
gone.
You vote for somebody to,
You don't want to be late
no.
because it'll be over. Actually, you want to be
But
early.
no, actually, isn't that where you choose who to send?
No.
Okay.
You choose
All
who's
right.
going to be on it. When you,
Yeah.
all
You
select
vote for
board
it,
members are supposed to go, and then you
Yeah.
choose
Okay.
who's supposed to be on it. So we can do that one, take that off as well.
And I'll be just, so let's 10-3 is the upgrade for the internet service.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't need new phones. I just need internet and them to be our phone provider. So,
We have something from them.
yes, you do. We are going to move away from
This was fun.
OT communications and go with LCI telephone communications and get 100 by 100 fiber optic connectivity here. We've been 2020 and it's been free, but it will be all new Wi-Fi equipment. There's just really no other option to address some of our issues here, so.
And will that address the Wi-Fi issue in this room?
Yes.
Take-
So this is strictly just letting you know this is what I'm doing.
Okay, yeah, so within
Okay.
your,
Yeah, it's just, this was just an FYI I'm doing.
John Lawrence wanted to
Thank
say
you.
I
something.
have a comment.
Oh,
Okay.
There's other pending details that we need to discuss that are related to this that I'm not prepared to speak to. I didn't even know this was going to be on here. But it does affect the function of our committee, TTC, and the way the town is using combination of fiber and cable currently, and the whole effect that needs to be.
Well, this affects my phone use, and right now I need my phones.
No, that's only one application.
Understood, but that's my most, right now, if I don't have phones, it's a problem.
Okay, so what
I need to do this.
What I'd like to do is have the opportunity to be made aware of what this is all about. This is the first I've heard of this.
Okay, but
And
this is for my
We do have a committee
phones.
in this town that has been working on an issue that you're well aware of, that I'd like to.
but not your phone.
But not my phones.
Is
It's,
next meeting a problem?
it could be, when I don't have phones, yeah.
Your phone isn't working?
Our phones have been intermittent. I need,
No, something else intermittent that has to do with Spectrum and other.
well, we
providers.
don't have Spectrum to this building.
Right. But there's Spectrum interconnecting this building to other buildings in this town that are using.
Right, but that's a whole separate issue. This is strictly for this building. Only for this building.
It's just, it is just the building.
It's just the building.
So you want to
Got
just
nothing
go
to do
ahead
with-
and do this without taking into account the bigger picture that.
Yes, I have no choice.
Which may be part of a discussion with the provider.
I'm gonna go ahead with this, because I can under our purchasing policy.
You can.
I can. I just wanted you to be aware. This is what we're doing, because I'm getting rid of OT communications, I'm going to LCI. in that whole process, we will get Wi-Fi that covers everything. It's going to be their Wi-Fi installation, not our own tech. So,
So we're gonna.
well,
we're
it's
gonna-
not, John.
It
It's,
is broader scope than just that.
well, this is what we're doing.
So then I guess the hell with the committee.
What's the building?
It's just for the building. I just need my phones to work. It's our VoIP.
Inside the building.
Right.
It's not anything outside of here. We pick up our phones and nobody's there.
Right.
I can't call out. from my
We
own
can't
house.
call out.
Well, I was aware of this, and there is another discussion that you and I have been having about another provider involved in this.
I understand that,
They're not
but for
involved in
me, I need to be able to have our phones to work. So when somebody calls the police department, somebody's answering, and we don't have that at the moment. And we need copper lines as backup, so that's what this is providing.
Okay.
And in
Trying to-
addition to that, we're getting 100 by 100
My
Wi-Fi.
own personal view is that you ought to do it, number one. That means I'm not gonna take it before my committee and tell them the other part of it, so I'll tell you right now, I think we should terminate everything that we have ongoing to try and improve our relationship, to get people connected in this town through Spectrum as well at the same time and announce the whole thing.
But
That's-
this is strictly
separate.
LCI.
That is a different topic, John.
But it involves turning on LCI to do more than they're currently providing in that scenario.
Yeah, but this is.
But this is totally separate.
This is a very defined, very limited project. It is about the phones. That's
It's
all
about
it
the
is.
phones.
That's all
It
it is.
really, literally is about,
But it's also about the fiber connectivity in the town.
because that's what I need to have my phones work. I just need my phones to work. So that when people call, somebody answers the phones.
Right. Okay.
Okay? All right. So I need a motion to move 10-4 and 10-5 to the next meeting, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, we'll move that to next week. 10-6 is not an issue we need to talk about. 10-7,
Money?
We just need a
We
motion
need a
to
motion
accept
on
the
the
criminal
criminal
forfeiture.
So moved.
Yep, second.
is there a second?
Yep,
Is
second.
there any discussion on the criminal forfeiture? How much are we getting out of this?
3,196.
Not bad.
Gonna say no
And
to
where is that going to?
That will go into the criminal forfeiture fund, and then we can use it for different things.
I think it's usually used for the drug program.
That's what I thought. That's why I was asking.
That's what,
Well, we have some
I was
creative
alluding to.
ways. We have a project already earmarked for it that at some point someone will come and talk to you about in the police department.
okay.
Okay.
All in favor of that? All right.
Good.
And then
So I have an answer to this.
10-8?
Yes, discussion on Jefferson Street and Friendship
I
Street
wish Lynn were here,
intersections.
But go ahead.
So that is a state road. We plow it, that's all we do. And there will not be a four-way stop.
There were other thoughts about maybe mitigating some of the problem. There are 2 parking spaces up front of the lawyer's office. They're supposed to be for compact cars.
They never are.
There are hardly ever any
That's
compact cars
enforcement.
in those spaces.
That's
Right.
It can also be just no parking at all on those spots. Just paint them yellow stripe, no parking, done. And they have parking around the side by the pizza shop. They don't need it out in front of their office.
Well, but
And there's also parking up the hill behind Tide Mart where people can park.
so we can write a letter to the state and ask them to come and look at it. But the actual four-way stop, which was originally what was discussed, cannot happen on that hill with that grade. They're just never going to approve that,
Well,
so.
it would be helpful to talk to them about it.
Yeah, usually, I found that, I've read that four-way stops are dangerous.
Well,
Some are.
that particular lay of the
And
land
that-
makes it even more dangerous, so.
I do, I use that road, that intersection.
We both do, all the time.
All the
Alan
time.
uses it.
It is very difficult, and for short people, it's even more
Yeah.
difficult to see when I'm.
Profiling. You're
Yeah, if I, well,
I find
Personal.
turning with that Raptor park there very difficult. Not that Raptor.
It's not mine.
well, I have a very difficult time seeing when there are cars parked there, even, and I have to pull way out in the road.
I think we should have John
So-
John and I sit with the Department of Transportation and talk to them about it. And supposedly when they redid,
They added.
they added spaces that we had gotten rid of in the past.
Right. They did.
Well, it is an issue.
They,
Right.
it's that is a
Yeah,
safety issue.
Okay.
Yep,
So I
It
can do
is.
that.
all right.
Yeah.
And then there was this audio wipes.
Audio Wives is for the expansion of their outside seating by 4 tables. And they have had no issues since they've been operational. It was a verbal, I did with the chief pending, he was supposed to get a letter to me before 6 o'clock tonight. It's a simple application for just expansion outside.
It's just the outside on the,
Yeah.
on the non-road side of
On the non-road
barn.
side, correct.
I don't see an issue
Yeah.
there. I mean, we've all been there, so. I would make a motion to approve the expansion by 4 tables.
Okay. Second.
Is there a second? Any, all in favor? Okay.
It's good news for them. They need more.
It is very good news
That's
for-
a good
Yeah.
business
for them.
Yeah, that is.
Actually want me to do a
And we have a
lobster
board of
clam
assessors
bake.
meeting.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they're
Do we
doing a
have-
lot of nice
We don't
community
have
things.
a Philbrook thing, do we? Okay. I
We do
entertain a
have an
motion to adjourn this
assessors.
meeting, if everybody's amenable.
What's that?
All in favor
No,
of
no, we
adjourning?
make a motion to go into an executive session.
No.
No, we're
Board of
doing-
Assessors.
We're doing assessors. Assessors.
Board of Assessors.
There's no filter.
It's not a Philbrook. Assessors is
Okay.
open.
Nope, can't.
Okay.
That's what we just said.
Yeah.
Do it, Joe?
We're
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. we're
You can
adjourned.
second it for, yeah.
Now we'll convene as the Board of Assessors. And I believe that
Susan, you don't have to stay.
Thank you.
But you can if you'd like to. Thank you.
Scott, thank you for doing all
Oh,
this.
you're
you know.
Yes, you guys have done a
By
great
the way, the
job.
minutes were wonderful
Yeah.
the last time. I loved it.
Yes, thank you.
Loved it. Good job.
And
The more
speedy.
detail that goes in, the more chance for error, so you almost read this critically.
Yes, yes. Good job.
Oh,
Do you remember me?
She gets
I
to
used
start
to do
first.
those garden.
Well,
Get
you
around
I
the
used to
meeting.
do
She's
your
gonna-
garden.
Okay, well, then you go first.
know that.
Yes.
I'm very glad.
And then give it to her. 'Cause she-
No, I don't know,
I really want her to do
I don't know
first,
what I wanna do.
because you're quick.
That's because he doesn't write. He does all. But he can print. I saw that on something I had to sign.
He
this
actually,
week.
for a male, prints
So
beautifully.
this is
Yeah,
a
his
public
printing
meeting,
is
nobody
just
has to
fine.
leave,
Really?
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
I call this meeting to order, please. Citizens' comment for items not on the agenda.
What?
Yep.
What?
Oh,
I'm the chair.
I didn't know we did
right
that.
here.
For-
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Get with the program.
Go, Katie, go.
All right, the official action tonight is to set the tax rate.
Good job, Daryl. And it's right for Sherry. I cracked myself up.
I handed out you suggested rates at the last meeting, or it was handed out. But since then, there was an audit of our Betty. Line 22 down there is Betty reimbursement, which stands for Business Equipment Tax Exempt. The auditor came in, went over all 170 of the applications, and challenged 39 of them, saying the town on last year's will not be reimbursed on those to a tune of $4,007. I have 30 days to challenge, which I can meet with the supervisor and go over them. The majority of them were farm tractors. I sent letters out saying, do you use this for business or personal? And if it's personal, they will not reimburse. If it's a business, they will. So I'm assuming we're gonna probably get that down to about a $2,000. And in the meanwhile, those that are truly personal, I took off from Betty, which was on the last form you had. So your Betty reimbursement is dropped down. So the current one you're looking at,
Oh. Okay, that's this one.
yeah, so this is the new number.
This is that.
That's why the numbers have
Good,
changed.
thank you. See what I write down.
Where we came in was, the four I gave you was 1760, 1770, 1780, and 1790. The 1760 would only give 17,700 in overlay. Generally, we make sure that the overlay covers abatements. And if you look at the big sheet, you'll see that abatements was 17,750.01, which are within $6 of covering last year. So that number really is not an option. So the next one up is the 1770, which would give you 67,000 in overlay, and is the recommended amount, I believe. Gladly discuss what the rates have been, what the overlay's been, what the abatements have been. Bob had talked about what are other towns looking at, and I handed you that tonight as to some of the surrounding towns. Camden went up 50 cents on theirs, Rockport $1.33, Warren 83, Rockland 80, Noblesboro 40, Friendship 65 was what this year's has gone up. The others are setting next week, generally Union, Wiscasset, Belfast.
And
of course-
I just want to point out, because this has to be said, we are in Lincoln County, we are the only truly full-service town. I just want everybody to understand that. You do not have full-time police coverage in any other town now 24/7.
Not even in.
Even in the county.
Oh, sorry, you're talking Lincoln County.
Lincoln
Lincoln
County,
County.
even not in the
Take it back.
county seat, they have like,
You know.
I'm just letting you know.
Yep.
This is a full-service community with full-time police, full-time EMS and paramedics, and, well, we all have the fire departments, but this is, we are unique. So I'm just letting you know, when you're comparing us to some of these other towns that have a much lower rate, they're not providing the services that we provide.
The state does put out what the rates are in every town, city in the state. I gave you a printout of Lincoln and Knox. And that is 2016 is the latest that's out there. And that tells you whether they're at 100% and what their rates are. But that'll give you,
I think we're even lower than Damer's County.
so we're gonna go up like 90 cents, is that right?
so we would go up 90 cents,
Yeah.
yes. The, where were the increases? The school budget went up $634,108, which was basically, I believe, the new
New school,
New school.
technology.
yeah. County went down 7,000, the town went up 59,841, but we also took out our deduct of 226, so.
Sorry, say that again, Joe.
The,
Did what?
under other revenues, we took out 2,197 last year, this year it was 226. So about 27,000 of it was additional excise or revenues.
And just bear in
What was the
mind,
county number?
The county was 7,060 lower, it's the 648, 381.18 was this year's.
So why did the county drop?
I don't
because they
know.
charged us more.
I don't know why the county went down.
Is that your fault?
Everything's my fault.
Charged for services, Wiscasset's paying for the police, the sheriffs, right?
It must be, because there's what,
Yes,
two
they are.
officers over there?
So that might, probably they offset by
They don't have
charging
two right
towns
now?
for the,
Well,
They
one,
don't
I
have
think.
Larry yet, so they don't even have two.
Good
And
point, good point.
I think we figured when we approved the school that we'd get another mill on
We
top
knew.
of it.
Yeah.
We knew.
We
Yeah,
didn't
it's here.
anticipate that,
Yeah.
and here it is.
yeah.
It's not a shocker.
No.
No.
And it's for a good thing. So.
I think
move
we can come down a little bit on the school thing.
Well, we can't right now.
No, I know.
Yeah, well, that's that building.
We
Yeah.
need to,
It's the Region 8 building, the new,
Region
no, I know.
but that's
I know.
what's driving this, which,
I move
We approved it.
17-7.
I get issues with
Okay.
that.
You can't vote.
I know I can't.
I move 17-7. Do we have a quorum?
Where am I?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got 3,
Oh,
You got
3,
three.
if you all agree.
I know, yeah.
That's a second,
And last year was what?
1680.
1680.
1680, I got it right here.
Well, we're not up a whole
Ellen has something to say.
No, he doesn't.
No?
He's just yapping back there.
Okay. So you're gonna,
He is.
so
He's
I'll
just
see what my
commenting.
taxes are. Right, there we go.
Are you gonna vote it?
Well, if there's a motion on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor.
So,
Did you vote?
I'm thinking,
Oh,
can't you see the smoke?
no, I couldn't, I'm sorry.
17.
Let's see, probably on the bottom.
What does everybody else think?
You had a question from the audience.
Okay, question?
I don't believe the town has an expense issue with the other 18 municipalities in the county. And I don't believe that there's any way around this raise. But I would advise you specifically that you do have a valuation issue compared to many of the other parts of the county. And that's what's really hurting you. And if you can't get those valuations up, which is actually the only way this can be contained for the long run, then you could go in a negative spiral where the 2%, you're getting to be 2% valuation would start to really inhibit people from building really valuable homes here and businesses. It would start to be, remember, you have a lot of adverse things. Proposition 1's going to probably pass. All of the real estate taxes over $10,000 and all the income taxes, which will now be 10% almost for some people, they're not deductible under the new tax law. So you're starting to go in a very high tax environment. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but in the long run, you have to find a way that you can't keep going up and up and up. Because the state's gone up, the federal new tax law has killed deductibility, and now this is going to 2%. And this is not, strategically, is not a sustainable picture over the next 3, 4, 5 years. But again, I'm not speaking to what you have to do today. You have to do this, but it's not an expense issue. The town's expenses per capita are not out of line. It's that your real estate valuation is deficient per capita.
Just to saying that, I was talking to a friend of mine that lives in Scarborough. Same size house as mine is 145,000 here. Down there is 400,000. Same size, no different. He's away from the shore. Everything. It's
And that materiality, it's also South Bristol has the higher valuations per capita. That's why they have, that's why the lower mill rates. You're exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, if I may, Madam Chairman. I guess I may.
You can. There's no
but-
need for you to stay.
The antinomy, the problem is that when you reduce the mill rate because you increase valuations, you're squeezing out the marginal folks. You're squeezing them out. And that's a tough row to hoe for this town. It's a really difficult balance to strike, a really difficult one to strike. And I'm not sure where we're gonna end up, Freeman, but you've made a really good point. It's a tough one. It's a tough issue.
Because I already know people, this is not, it's more than just the one end, there's several. They now literally they're not named residents anymore. They have found a way either to rent or to only live here 4 or 5 months, and they live in Florida, and they don't pay tax to the state, and they've avoided it because they've figured out the delta becomes so significant they can actually live in Florida almost and paying for the tax difference.
It always bugs me
So,
to see those
Is it?
Florida plates.
What they do?
I'm just curious. Is it the shoreline that's
Oops, I just put Maine.
undervalued? Is that?
No,
Or is it just state town law?
No, it's that you don't have, it's proportion, is what you said in the place. We have a big tail, so we have a lot of property that has low valuation. Some of the places they're so close and desirable that they have, the mix is different. the mix here is you have a lot of lower priced properties, and then people are using services like the schools. I'm not criticizing it, but there's just a different mix of people in many places, more affluent, fewer children. Because obviously what's driving it is not, Julie's domain is not what's expensive. What's expensive is SAB 40, that's what's expensive.
I already signed that one.
Point taken.
Jan, what do you think?
What do I think?
Do you have any thoughts on the, any discussion?
I agree with the 1770.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I raised my hand on that one. Yep.
Oh, she seconded.
Yes, she
Yeah.
did.
I didn't hear that.
Yep.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Is this the same as this?
Yeah, it's to send out to the other towns.
All in favor of 1770 for mill rate? 1770.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, if you didn't,
I move we adjourn.
did you do this one?
He has to do that one.
He has to do that one.
Second, German, second,
2 pages.
second.
No.
All in favor?
No, he has to do
You have to
the,
do this one.
yeah, but you have to do it, they're
You have to
copies.
do it.
Okay.
Where did I see that?
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Daryl,
Dave.
for putting that together.
Bye, good night. Get home quick.
Why? Are the Red Sox winning or losing?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Is that done recording?
I'm fixing it.
They,
Got a comment.
the big thing at your animals that you're spreading a manure on, like Pat's Moffett in that pile of manure, and it's 500 feet away, but if it goes to a stream right under the ground, you know where it is.
Oh, yeah.
When it was down there,